Welcome back to the Dreaming and Doing podcast. I am speaking with the drill sergeant of productivity today. And this is our second time recording since I literally just lost power and interrupted our call. So hopefully our conversation goes smoothly because you are in for a treat with our conversation with Dr. Paris Love today. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Second time's a charm, right?
Second time. Yes. So, you and I met a few years ago. We were both doing this really amazing business training program, and we had the chance to meet in person in New York City. And I got to see you present and talk about your business. And the thing that stood out to me when you were presenting, you said that you work with women who are a public success, but a private mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's what we're here to talk about today, because I want to hear more about that. So tell me where that line came from.
All right. And before I tell you, do you know it was actually 2 years ago, almost to the day.
Oh, so this is perfect timing.
Yeah, I realized that. I was like, wait, I think we were in New York. Okay, sorry, everyone.
We're having our own anniversary party.
I know, right? So that came about 10 years ago. I started doing retreats, and I started working a lot with women. And I say, this is interesting. Things were coming up, and women were saying they were pretty much a public success but a private mess, which means how they would show up to the world, like they were made up, well dressed, on like at the top of their game, top of their industry. But when they came home, they were a complete mess because they just take their mask off. They're like, now I can be who I am. And I thought, well, couldn't you do that when you were out in the world? But society says we should be, do, and have. And so a lot of times the women would take that on, and that's not who they were. But when they came home, they felt they could be themselves. And so I always tell people, when you see me, what you see is what you get.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I might gut punch you, you'd be okay. Like I would gut punch my mom. It's gonna be okay. But I don't change who I am. And oftentimes women were, sometimes they call it code switching, but they would be different around people and around certain people. I'm like, you should always be who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, well, I don't really know how to do that because I don't know who I am now. Somehow throughout the years, I lost my identity. I don't know what I want. I don't know what my dreams are anymore. Like, I don't know.
Well, and I'm curious to hear about that because you actually go to people's homes. Like you're in their homes, you are seeing what this looks like. So, what are you seeing when you're seeing this contrast between kind of the mask people wear and what's actually going on at home?
Yeah, it's a mess. No, just joking. I love clutter. I know that sounds weird, but I'm gonna give you an example for one of my clients. Like, awesome, like brilliant woman, and she said, "I need you to come over and help me organize my house because I deal with physical clutter." And I was like, "Okay." So when I got to the house, I looked around. I was like, "I am so sorry. I've never had this before. I don't know why you called me." She said, "Oh, come here, Paris. Let me show you something." She opened up a door. She said, "Stand back." And when she opened the door, everything fell out. So what she did, like the house was something out of a magazine, but she would push everything in closets. And if you think about that, think back, when you were a child, did your parents clean up when someone was coming over? And the cleanup wasn't put it where it belongs. It was hide under the bed, put in that room. No one's going to go in there. Like they're going to be in the living room, the bathroom, everything you hide. And so a lot of times we grow up and we bring on those behaviors. And so she was just used to, if someone's coming over, let me hide the mess. And so as women, a lot of times we're going to hide our true selves. I don't want anyone to know who I really am because maybe they might not like me. We have this perception of what people want us to be. And it's like, is that their perception or your perception?
Yeah, and I think that that's so interesting. I'm thinking about, and I think that's going to resonate with so many people, right? It might not be a closet, it might be the junk drawer or something else they
Mhm.
have in their home. But I'm also just thinking about this idea of like, I gotta, stick the mess in the closet. And how does that relate to how we feel about certain parts of ourselves? Like,
Yeah.
that's too messy. I
Yeah.
can't show up that way.
I'm gonna hide it. I was talking. I have another client. She's a millennial, or maybe she might be that. I think she's yeah, she's a millennial. And I said, it's interesting. Your generation, when you go out, you gotta be all dolled up. Because I had another client say, "Well, I have to go get ready, so it's gonna take me 3 hours." 3 hours to do what? And it literally took her 3 hours to get ready. And I'm like, "You look the same when you went in." It literally took her 3 hours. And it's funny because, and it might be my generation, but I kind of find it with the younger generation, they like, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't put on makeup, definitely bathe every day, be presentable. But it's that if I don't do this, then I can't go anywhere. I'm not good enough. I'm not
Hmm.
pretty enough. I'm like, honey, look, I didn't put any makeup on. This is me. And it's interesting because I tell people, honey, if you like me at my worst, you'll love me at my best.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just my perception of it. If I go out and I don't have on makeup, okay, that's
Mm-hmm.
like I want to be presentable. I want to comb my hair and bathe. I'm not going looking out any kind of way, but I also don't get trapped in I have to be perfect before I
Mm-hmm.
do X. And a lot of times in like going into people's home and their environment, it's that perfection that when I'm out, I'm just perfect. And then when you come home, you're like, okay, I could just let loose. Like at work, everything's in order. When I come home, I'm not putting anything in order. There's piles of mail, like there's all kinds of things because I'm really not being my true self when I'm out in public because I perceive that if I'm not perfect, people may not like me. People may
Mm-hmm.
have a different opinion of me. Okay. Look, okay. You
And I'm curious how your clients have responded, right? When you're like, listen, what you see is what you get.
know.
How have they responded getting to see someone model authenticity?
They love it. I've been in business 20 years and I still have a lot of actually I do. I have probably like 99% of my clients are still with me. And they're like, I love your energy. They're like, we love it. And I've heard people go, I want to be confident like you.
Hmm.
And I didn't really think that it was confidence. I'm just being me. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been this way since high school. You know, in high school, they were like, the appearance has not changed. It's just how she is. And because what's interesting, when you're around certain people, especially like family and friends, you think that everyone is kind of like this. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, is like I grew up in a house where I am former military. My parents weren't, but everything was in order, everything was clean and organized. And when I went to my friend's house, the same thing. Like their parents would set the table, like how the table was set for dinner all the time. And everything was always clean. I would go to my friend's house and like, parents, you need to vacuum. Why we gotta vacuum? And that's what they had us cleaning. And so and I just assumed that everybody was like that. So then let's take it the other way. If you didn't grow up, like a lot of times when people, like you don't know what you don't know. So say for instance, you didn't clean your room up, it was a little messy. You assume everyone's that way
Mm-hmm.
until you see different. You're like, oh, everybody don't live this way. I'm like, no. And I really thought that everybody was like really organized and their home was out of a magazine. Like to this day, you did not go in my mom's living room because nobody goes to the living room. I'm like, it's the living room. And it's so funny. She's going to hear this and be like, "Are you still talking about the plastic on my furniture?" Yes, I am. Yes, I am. She still has plastic on her furniture. Bless her heart.
Well, and
But her
I imagine that
generation did that.
that must have been quite a surprise for you when you realized that not everybody else is quite as tidy as the families you grew up with.
And it was interesting. So when I started my business, I was like, I want to change the world one person at a time. Now, I still have that theory. I want to change the world one person at a time. But going into home, I don't judge. I don't judge. And I think that's one reason why my clients like me, because I come in, I'm like, let's get to work. Let's get to work. And they're like, you're not going to judge me? No, I'm not. Like, I can see beyond the clutter, beyond the mess, and I want to get you there, but I'm not judging you for that. Because on the other hand, someone could judge me for always being neat and tidy. So
Now, I know that you have mentioned that it's not just about physical clutter, that there are 3 kinds of clutter, and this was all new to me. So I would love to hear more about the 3 kinds of clutter.
it's emotional, mental, and physical clutter. So the physical clutter is the piles of paper, the mail that doesn't get unopened, the piles of clothes. I'm going to hang that up later, and it just kind of piles up. That's the physical clutter. The emotional clutter can come from, I wonder if they like me. Am I good enough? Did I do that right? Am I smart enough? I don't know why I did that. Which also turns into the mental clutter of, I knew I am so dumb. Why did I do that? I know that they're right. Maybe I have ADHD. Maybe something's wrong with me. Maybe I have obsessive compulsive disorder. Why do I think that? All the stuff that comes in our head. And then we start putting labels on ourselves. Don't put labels on yourself. I don't know if I mentioned this to you, how I started my business. So I have a son who has special needs. And I was in the doctor's office organizing his bookcase. And the doctor's like, it's not normal to go to other people's offices in their homes and organize your stuff. Really? Because my friends, they love when I come over. He said, you have obsessive compulsive disorder. And I started taking the test. And I was like, well, I've always done that. Like, doesn't everybody do that? He was like, no, not everybody does that. And so I actually turned my OCD into a business. And I tell people, there's nothing wrong with me. What's wrong with being organized and neat? And it's funny because when I go on conferences, or we do, like, my coach would rent out a big mansion and we all stay there. I said, I promise I won't be irritating, but it's probably fun to watch, because when everyone eats, I'm in there cleaning the dishes and stuff. I'm like making the beds, and they're like, Paris, can you sit down? I'm like, no, it's just me. And that's just what I do. So it's fun to watch, but I don't really think that there's anything weird with that. Other people might go, yep, that's not normal. But here's what's interesting. Who defines normal? Who defines normal?
And you've found a way to make it work for you professionally.
Yeah.
Now, I'm wondering, what are some of the other ways you see those 3 types of clutter showing up in people's lives?
So, and they all go hand in hand. So we talked about the physical clutter. Most people would call me to deal with the physical clutter. But that's a byproduct of what's really going on.
Yes.
So it's that mental and emotional clutter. So I like to peel back the onion. My PhD is in advanced studies in human behavior. So I just sit back and watch people. I'm like, I'm fascinated why we do what we do. So even though you have the physical clutter, it's why do you have the physical clutter? Why and how did you get here? And what can we do to move you past that so you don't go back to this place? Because a lot of times when we have clutter, there's a void somewhere. And that void probably came up when we were children.